Welcome everyone to the Uncommon Family Podcast. I'm Roxanne.
And my name is Bronson, and this is actually our first episode where we're going to talk a little bit about who we are and the vision that we have for this podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to our podcast. My name is Bronson, and this is my lovely wife, Roxanne.
My name is Roxanne.
So we decided to start this podcast just because there's a lot of things that I believe that we've gone through in life that we could share, and just things that are going on in the world, specifically when it comes to families, kids, marriage, just things that we felt that was placed in our hearts, by God, as we've been going through it. In no means we are a perfect couple. We have a perfect marriage, or we're perfect parents.
Yeah.
But we believe we've went through a good amount of things
So far,
in our marriage,
Yeah.
And also being parents, that we can just share with you guys on what we've done and what we've learned, how we've grown. We are still growing, so this is not in any way advice. We're not giving you advice. This is just us sharing with you guys about what we've gone through in life and how we've handled it.
yeah. I
So-
feel like with that, especially with Christian couples, people feel like it's a stigma. It has to be perfect, or like, I don't know. I was that way. I would look at other couples who are like in the church and be like, their marriage must be so perfect, and their kids are perfect. So I
Right.
feel like this is where people get a glimpse of, oh wow, like it isn't perfect,
Right.
and they can rest at ease and be like not so pressured to think that their marriage has to be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I guess a little backstory, right? So, we've met in church. I guess that's a place to start. So we met in church.
Actually, we didn't meet at church though.
Well, when we met, we were going to the same church,
Yeah.
but we met
We
in small
actually
groups.
yeah.
So we met in small groups.
It was technically like a young adult hangout because
Yeah.
I'm
At the time it was.
you don't know this, but I was like, I asked the leader who was like hosting the small groups. I was like, okay, do I bring my Bible? Do I bring a journal? And she's like, you just bring yourselves. You just hang out. And I'm like, okay. But like, we just sat down on our phones and just like talked,
Right.
but not really. We went to go watch a movie.
No, we watched the movie afterwards. But
Yeah, afterwards.
Yeah. So we met at small groups. At the time, I wasn't really like in the space of like, oh, I'm looking for somebody.
I feel like that would be
When-
weird though.
When we met, I was like, oh, like, thought she was nice. I was like, okay, she's also pretty, but it wasn't like anything further than that. But
Right.
as we got to spend more time around each other, I just felt obviously like, what's that word?
A nudge?
No, just felt drawn to you for some reason, not knowing why, because we were still like,
We didn't
we didn't really know each.
other.
Yeah, we were still pretty like, not like newly.
It's not like we were like flirty or like, typical people, I guess, when they
Yeah.
meet. Yeah.
So
we were just like, oh.
at the time, I had a good friend that I talked to about, because I didn't know what this. I was just like, why am I feeling this way about somebody who I barely know anything about? And it was a feeling of like being attractive, obviously like attracted to you, even though I wasn't like in the mind space of like, oh, I'm looking for somebody. But I brought this up to somebody who I looked up to in church, and he just told me to pray about it. So I just remember myself praying that, okay, God, is like, what is this feeling? Is this a feeling that I need to pursue? Because I felt like, okay, like if God has somebody for me, he will bring it. Like, I feel like a lot of people have this prayer, right? Like, okay, God, you will have somebody for me, and you'll bring them to me. And then when the person does come into your life, you're like, okay, is this the one? Are you questioning?
They're like, I didn't. I don't know. They don't fit in my criteria of what I'm looking for or something.
You're just kind of questioning if this is the one or the time. So obviously, yeah, I just pursued it, and I just said, okay, well, if this is something that, I think I remember talking to God, and I was like, okay, if she feels somewhat a similar attractiveness or like attraction, then maybe this is something we can just
and I want to
talk.
clarify, when he says attraction. It's not like, oh, this person looked
No,
good.
yeah, like look,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
nothing with looks.
'Cause-
It was just more
yeah.
so of like, I don't
Like
know.
some kind of like,
I felt just like a pull like towards you in the sense of like I don't know why was feeling it, or I didn't know like, I don't know how to explain it. It's
I
like,
just wanted to add to that because, I mean, we talked about this obviously, but yeah, because it's weird. It's like, I don't know you. And then I wasn't like looking for someone either. I just knew that I was in nursing school, I got back from the Philippines and then I find this church and then I just wanted to get plugged in because I just wanted to be surrounded by other young
Right.
Christians, I never wanted like to go party. So I'm like, okay, well, where would I fit in then? Okay, I guess I'll just go to church and find some church friends initially, or people at least with the same values as me. And then, yeah, typically I'd be like, ooh, but I feel like the attraction is like it is hard to explain, I guess. It's just
No,
like,
like,
oh, what is this
it wasn't
feeling like?
like
Why?
there was an attraction.
Drawn.
Of,
I guess
like,
you're
yeah,
drawn to a person.
right?
Yeah.
Like I was being drawn to you in a way that was like more than
yeah.
just like, oh yeah,
Physical.
You look like, oh yeah, this person looks pretty, or like it wasn't looks.
Yeah.
It was just more so a drawn to you in the sense of like, why did I have this feeling?
Yeah.
Because at the time I'm like, we barely know each other.
Right.
And I just remember praying like, okay, God, well, if she like, I'm gonna approach it, and like, trust me, like this was something that at the time I was like, I don't know if this is gonna be like, if this is gonna work, because like I just was like, okay, I'm like,
You can be honest.
okay. I was like,
I'm sure this is what we're doing
right.
though, right?
So
It's
I'm like, okay,
this is like real stuff.
like I was like, I knew as much as like, okay, where she's from, how old she is. So I was like, okay, like I'm 5 years younger, and I was just like, but I was like, I don't think this would work, like, or I don't think you'd be into that. So then, like me bringing this like up to your attention of being drawn to you, because I'm like, oh, she might just think that I'm like this little weird kid, like.
And it's funny because we talk about these things, and then like in my thinking too, I was like, oh, he might be like, whoa, like she's like 5 years older than me. That's kind of weird. Like she's like an older sister.
Well, because at the time I was 19.
Right. But I didn't. Okay, granted. Okay, guys, like I thought he was older than he was, and I mean, I'm not trying to boast, but I look young, like for my age.
Right.
So.
But yeah, that was kind of my thoughts of like, I don't know, guy, like, do I bring this up to you, and knowing that, but then I was just like, you know what? Okay, like my friend that I was talking to, I was just like, I told him, he's like, bro, just do it. Like, just tell her. And I'm just like, okay. So I just remember messaging you, or texting you.
Well, you said like happy birthday.
Yeah, it was because it was around that same
Yeah.
time. And I just remember texting you and just like, okay, just telling you I had to like tell you something. And then,
I mean, I think it flowed more naturally eventually.
Yeah, like I think it was.
You didn't like straight up, hey, happy birthday. Hey, I just want to tell you something. No, it like kind of like, I think my birthday happened first.
Yeah.
So our birthdays like are around the same. It's in the same month. Right. And mine is in the beginning and his is at the end. So you had said happy birthday. And then I found out when your birthday was. And I was like, oh, hey, maybe we should like do something to celebrate our birthdays, because we didn't really hang out.
Yeah.
We just saw each other at church and then here at group.
Yeah.
It's not like he ever reached out, and I didn't reach out to be like, hey, you want to hang out? Yeah. We just wanted to be friends. Like, I think we were in a space of like, we just want to make friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like everybody else. Right.
Right.
But I think that's why, and then it led to that
But before that, I think there was like that drawing, like, oh, because I was in the same space of like, oh, what is this feeling? So I say he has like really strong prayers, but like, yeah, I was just like, oh, I don't know what these feelings are. And then, yeah.
Yeah. But then that's when I messaged you about having to tell you something or talk to you about something.
Right. And then like I'm like we were talking like, oh, how was your day? Whatever. Not, I mean, like just casual friend kind conversation. And he goes, oh, I just wanted to tell you something. And then I was like, okay, guys, like, I can see why girls are like crazy, because they're like, he just ghosted me or something, because he straight up just, next morning.
Well, it was nighttime, I believe.
It was like 9 though. And I was, well, yeah, I guess.
And at the time, like, my schedule was kind of weird at my work.
But like,
so I fell asleep.
What is that? A cliffhanger, right? Is that what it's called?
I guess.
Yeah. I was like, okay. And
I
then
didn't
like
leave. I
I'm
didn't
like
leave it on. Like I didn't
waiting.
leave it on red. I didn't read it, like your response, and then just leave it.
I know, but I was just like,
But I was just
okay.
like,
So
but I fell asleep, and
yeah.
then
And then
I woke
I
up.
mean, I wasn't waiting up all night, but I was like, okay, that was weird.
But then I brought it up to your attention, and I don't know. I guess what was your first thought when I brought that up? I guess
I want to tell you something.
like when I told you how I like the feeling that I was feeling.
So I don't think you know this, but like obviously we knew each other for some point, and then I
Right.
was like, oh, okay, he's kind of cute. So obviously I was like, what is he gonna tell me? Like, like I didn't think you were gonna tell me like to an extent, but I was probably thinking like, oh, maybe you want to hang out, like leading up to maybe like hanging out to get to know each other more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna mention something too prior to that. Well, I don't think I ever told you this, but there was a point. Sorry, this is kind of not off topic, but kind of off topic. I don't know if I told you this, but there was a point which was kind of weird, was because, okay, so prior to meeting Bronson, I was like engaged and then whatever. But I had prayers. I didn't have specific prayers on the guy that I wanted to marry, but in a sense of like, I started to really realize with, things that were going through, I had healed from that season, but I started to realize like, okay, what is it that I wasn't looking for a relationship, but what is it in a man? Because the next guy that I would date would be the one I'm going to marry. I was like, I'm not going, and I've always been that way. I don't play games or anything. I don't talk to guys just to talk to guys. But I was like, one of the things was that the guy that I end up marrying, whenever, ish hits the fan and times get tough, he would direct me who to turn to. And I don't know if you remember this, but I think so we used to ride together with his older brother to the small groups. And then
it was kind of far.
we started to build
we
like
lived on the
some
same-
kind of relationship, right? Yeah. And that's why I was like, oh, whoops. That's why I was like, oh, what is he going to tell me? Yeah. So one thing that you said, because I was like, oh, hey, if you ever need a ride, we can carpool or something like that.
Like we would alternate.
Yeah.
So we would drive
But
sometimes.
I think it was in that conversation I just said it anyways. And then, or the topic came up as to like, hey, if you ever need anyone to talk to, I'm here for you. And then he said, I'm here for you too, but I'll make sure that you go to God first. And I think that's where I was like starting to be like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Like, not like in a bad way, but I was like, whoa, God, like, I think that also added more on to like me being like drawn to you, because I was like, I wasn't like, oh my God, this is going to be my husband. But like,
But really though.
but like, you know what I mean? I was just like, oh, that's weird. Like, okay, God, like that's something that I had mentioned. Yeah. But did I know that we would end up together? No, still, I didn't think we'd end up together anyways.
I don't know
if I told you that.
I think I remember you telling me something.
But I was
about
like,
that.
okay, God, like.
But I think because before we met, like I just went through a lot of stuff like going out of high school, right? Because I basically graduated a year before we met. But I just remember when we found the church we were at, I was just so focused on. Sorry, I was looking at the TV and I was supposed to look at the camera. But when we found the church that we were at, I was just so focused on my relationship with God, and I was just like really searching where He wanted me, because I was also in the mind space of, am I going to go to college? Like, what was my plans? And because I just went straight into working, and obviously, like I had an older brother, he went to school, and I couldn't think, or I couldn't process myself going to school not knowing like what I was going to do. Right, I didn't want to go into debt, so obviously
that's
like,
all you knew is you didn't want to
so
go
obviously
into debt.
like at the time I was just going to work, and I'm just focusing on my relationship with God. And I met people. I've met one of my best friends at the time, Noah, and that's something that I was just so focused on. So I guess obviously like my mind space was in a place of like,
Right.
I know when it comes to like supporting somebody or being there for somebody, but that's kind of why I looked at things of like, oh, if I was to have somebody that I would look to for like support or something, I would want them to point me to God.
Right.
Also, like, give me the advice, right? Like,
But yeah.
in the aspect of whatever I'm going through, but also leading me to, obviously, God has all the answers, right? God also gives you the peace
Right.
and the support for whatever you're going through. But that's kind of where I came from with that, because of where I was in my life.
But that stuck out to me
But-
because I was like, normally a guy would be like, oh yeah, I'm here for you too. Like you can hit me up whenever
Right.
you need, you
Right,
know?
right.
So you saying like, oh, I make sure that you go to God first. That stuck out to me because I was
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's because the season God had me in.
Yeah.
But that's why,
sense.
I don't know, I was just curious of like when I first told you that. But that's basically how we
Oh yeah,
started.
I was just like, okay, like, oh, what is he gonna tell me? Because I was like, we don't really show interest in each other. We're not like flirty towards each
Right.
other. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, oh, what is he gonna tell me? And then yeah, left me on red. No, I'm just kidding. I know you said you didn't look at your phone, but he did always like knock out, and I'm just like, I guess because I'm just awake,
But, yeah.
late. Yeah.
That was basically, so that's all to say that's our first, that's how we met.
I
And
have
then
to
we started,
ask you something.
well,
But this
that?
is like, so remember when we first met, and then what is that called? Because I was there first, and I was waiting for you guys, and they were late as always. So initially I said hi to Brada first, and then I said hi to you. Do you know it? Do you know that I gave you a handshake?
yeah.
I still crack up every time because
It
I
was
was like,
it was just
that
a
was
weird,
the most
like,
awkward
like
thing
hand
ever.
or a hug, hand hug, yeah.
But the reason why I gave you a handshake was because you kind of took a while. We're both from Hawaii, and it's just a cultural thing. Like you hug the person. So his brother, I hug him. I'm like, hi, I'm Roxanne, blah, blah, blah. And then Bronson comes, but like there was like a huge gap. Like he didn't, and then I'm just like, hi, I'm Roxanne. And then after that, we ended up hugging. So that's just funny because I told one of my best friends, I was like, oh, I went to like hang out with, some people from church. I was like, it was really awkward. There was like this guy. And then I was like,
I guess I stood out because she was talking about me.
I was like, I gave him a handshake and then we ended up hugging anyways. But yeah, I just was wondering like if
Right.
you noticed that. It was just
I remember,
funny.
yeah, I remember because we
It's
talked
just
about
funny.
it before. But yeah, that's basically how we met, how we began, our relationship began. I think I started dating in 2014, and then
It's the
4
same
years.
year. Same year, right?
It was like towards the ending of 2013 is when we.
Well, we started dating in October too, right? We got married in October.
Yeah.
And we were dating in October.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and we
it
met
was
like
October.
summertime.
It was October 22, 2014.
Yeah.
That's when we started dating. That was the day we started dating, when I asked you to be my girlfriend. And then we were dating
I'll
for
be
4
honest,
years.
I don't even remember when you asked me. But maybe we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, we'll remember. But we dated for 4 years, got married in 2018. Fast forward a couple of years, we had our first
Our daughter.
Our
little three-nager.
our little diva.
You'll probably see her. She'll want to be in this.
And then fast forward three more years to last year,
2 months
December.
ago. Yeah.
We then
We
welcomed
had
our son. So it's a family of 4. Yeah, now we have 2 little munchkins that we bring everywhere.
Yeah.
So but that's basically where we're at in life, and we've gone through a good amount of stuff.
Oh yeah, I think especially in our first year or second year of marriage. Second
I
year.
would say second year. First
Like
year
they
is
say the first
usually
years, yeah, it's like the honeymoon
phase,
stage. Yeah.
or
But I
honeymoon
don't think we
stage.
were like delusional.
No.
We still went through stuff, but we were learning about
Right.
each other.
That's
And
when because we didn't live together before we got married.
yeah. And
We
I
met-
feel like premarital also, I was going to talk about like, yeah, we didn't live
Right.
together. So we were learning about each other, which I highly recommend because I always like, I had people tell me like, oh, you don't want to get married if you guys don't live with each other.
Right.
And I'm like, what am I going to do? Not want to marry him just because I don't like how he handles his laundry,
Right.
which I've heard a funny story. I'm not going to mention
Okay.
it, but yeah,
For another time.
you know what I'm talking about, right?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. It doesn't
But-
deal with us, but yeah.
So we obviously, well, when I guess our courting phase, right? We I lived with my parents. She lived with her parents or
Yeah.
her mom.
No, dad was
And
still alive then.
yeah,
Oh,
he was
but
in
he
the
was in the
Philippines.
Philippines,
Yeah. But, and we didn't, we didn't live together until we got married.
Yeah.
So
We can save that for, there's a topic to talk
yeah,
about, I
we'll
guess.
talk about that in another time. But
And I think I was going to mention something about premarital. Yeah, that first year, I think we did okay, especially because we had premarital counseling and like,
yeah,
but you still learn, right?
yeah. And
Sometimes everything in the book doesn't
marriage
apply, or
marriage
like
is
you don't want
always-
it to
You're
apply.
always learning in marriage.
Yeah. I feel like
And you're never going to stop
you should
learning.
always be learning. Yeah.
But I think there was a lot of things that we did. I guess, I don't know. I guess my question would be, what was your,
Why do
guess-
I get all the questions?
I mean, if you have
Just
a
kidding.
question, you can ask me a
And
question.
I think
I
I
guess
am.
a question to both of us would be, what was our like expectation of how marriage would be
Mm.
compared to what it ended up looking like for the first 3 years before our
I'm
daughter
trying to
was here?
think.
Or
Well,
2 years.
I guess we can start off with the first year. I think it was.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was gonna be like, oh, it's gonna be so nice, like gonna be with my best friend every day, 24/7. But
Was it not? No, I'm just kidding.
no, it was.
I'm trying to
obviously
remember
it
back
was-
to our first year.
Obviously, marriage is a beautiful thing, right? It's meant for. There's a lot of beautiful things that happen in marriage, right? That you get to do when you're married.
Yeah, let's just put that clear. We didn't live together. We
Yeah.
never had like sex or anything.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting it out,
Right.
out there. So,
So,
like,
like,
yeah.
when it comes to our first year of marriage, we had a lot of fun. So, but you can use your imagination how you want. So, but I think my expectation of marriage was like, oh, it's gonna be fun living with your best friend. You get to go travel. You get to
Yeah,
go
I
do these
think-
things, and you get to like,
I was going to mention that. Like the social media of, what is that? Idea of marriage
Right.
is what
Or
I kind of
once you
thought.
get, like-
Because we also had we had goals. But I mean, even when we were like dating, we said like, oh, we're going to be like the fit couple. What else did we
which
say?
we were actually going to the gym pretty consistently when we were dating.
Yeah,
But once you get
and
married,
we had
that
to
thing
get
changes.
into those wedding clothes. Like I remember, I was like, I'm not gonna eat this, this, and this. I did pretty good with my fitting into my wedding dress.
Even before that, though, I feel like we did pretty good.
We
in our
did.
dating phase.
Here and there, though, we
We
were
were there, yeah. But I feel like once we got married, that
It's
just
okay,
went out
guys.
the
We're
window.
gonna get back on it.
I guess once we got married, we just enjoyed food a lot more because we were together all the time.
But
We
I
would go out to
agree.
eat.
Like I think I thought there would be a lot of like, oh, we're gonna save. I mean, I don't think we really, which would tie into like what we know now for a marriage, like having a vision for a marriage.
Right.
I don't think we had a vision for a marriage. It was just like, we're gonna be married and we're gonna work towards our marriage,
Yeah.
obviously. But we didn't really not plan things, but we were just like living day to day, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Which I mean, we still do, but we didn't really have like a vision.
But I think at that time also we were just enjoying life.
Yeah, because
'Cause we
we
were
had
just-
both. Like you had I had my nursing career. Like I had just really started my nursing career,
Right.
and then you had a good job,
Yeah, and we were just both working, making
Our
pretty good
money,
income
yeah.
for two people.
and then
And
blowing
our-
it off on food.
Yeah, and our
all the
living
time.
situation was pretty chill.
Wasn't
because
crazy. Yeah,
we
didn't have like a goal to have a house.
Right.
We were just like, oh, we're good. Like we have our place.
and we just enjoyed time and enjoyed life.
Yeah.
And then it changed, right? Because the year after was COVID.
Yeah.
The year after COVID hit, and that was like, okay.
Oh yeah, very true.
Well, the year after COVID hit, and then we found out she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I find
During
out,
that.
I find out you're pregnant on our anniversary
Yeah.
of 2019, because our daughter was born in 2020.
So that is 1 year then.
Yeah.
We were a year married, and it's funny because people would ask us like,
Oh yeah, that's why you need to be specific in your prayers, because every time somebody asks us,
they're like, "Oh, you
"When
guys are
when you
good.
planning
You
on having
guys have
kids?"
like your income's
Right.
okay." Your
But they would
guys-
always ask, "Oh, when do you guys plan on having kids?" And we would always say, "Oh, within a year or two."
Yeah, and
And it happened within a year. So
Yeah.
that's why you want to be specific with what you say.
she's a blessing, of
No,
course.
yeah,
but
we love her, but she's
none of our kids are planned.
yeah, she could be a handful sometimes.
yeah, of
but-
course, but
But I think that's so. Yeah, in 2019 is when we find out you're pregnant, and then
and COVID.
COVID, and that's where marriage gets real, because I feel like that's where a lot of things that
Going into our second year.
Going into our second year of marriage, just where we started to see, okay, especially with things being shut down, the way things were, finances started to become a thing that was that topic.
But we didn't really like fight about finances though.
Right. We didn't fight about it, but I think it was more so that
like, or unless you felt like a pressure, because so I was doing nursing. Bronson had a really good, I mean, for the most part with benefits and everything. Thank God he had a job during COVID. So I feel like finances, unless it was on your end, because for me, crazy enough, like being pregnant, COVID happening, I'm not working, my husband's working, and I was like the main breadwinner before that. I think I was like pretty chill, which is kind of weird. But I was just like,
you were also just focused on carrying the baby and doing whatever you had to do.
Well, I was still pregnant though, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you were pregnant for a little while.
Until,
working.
Because then COVID got full blown what?
Towards the ending of the year.
Right.
So I would say like, I don't know.
Because Aveo was born 2020.
Yeah, it was like after, because you told me on our anniversary, then it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Because we were still going out. We went out to dinner and it was like they didn't have the mask stuff.
No, because it wasn't a thing. Like they were just.
It was like November, I think.
Yeah, they were still like, December. Oh, is this really happening or whatever? Right. Yeah.
So November, December, I believe is like when it really.
I don't know. What were your. Well, because I was told. I was a per diem nurse, so I like picked my schedule anyway. But then my nursing manager was like, "Oh, we don't need a per diem nurse right now." So, I wasn't working, but we still had some kind of income. I don't know. Was it hard for you? I don't know. I never really asked you. Like, was it hard on your? I don't think it was hard,
but I think it was just more so of the mindset of like, because of what started to go on. Like, oh, like now you start thinking about.
Because I was just chilling pretty much, to be honest.
I mean, yeah, I was blessed that my job was still up and running. We didn't stop. We didn't close.
Yeah.
But I think in the back of my head was like, well, what if we do close, or like, what if they end up shutting us down, or what if, like, what would we do then, right?
They had them stimulus money or whatever.
Well, yeah,
COVID money. But yeah,
I mean, at the same time, it's like, okay, but you're also pregnant, and
right.
It's like if they shut my job down, then what are we gonna do?
Was that running in the back of your mind?
Yeah, at the time.
And before we didn't really like. I think now we conversate more, especially for me asking him how he's feeling. But before, the reason why I'm asking, like, how did you feel at the time, for like them to know, is because I didn't ask him these things. Like, I didn't really ask how you were feeling. And he was very good at like not sharing or showing like any stress. I was the one who would be like anxious. I would show anxiety more than him. So for me, I would be like, oh, he's good, because he didn't really like show
because I was always
signs of like,
because I'm pretty level,
ask my husband
I'm pretty
what's going
level-headed. Like,
yeah,
I'm pretty level-headed in the sense of like, if I'm going through something, I know that I'm gonna have to figure it out, or I'm gonna have to like deal with it. Yeah, that's just how I grew up, right? So I think that was an aspect of, I feel like, what you've learned about me, and even what I learned about myself on how I react to things, or how I handle certain situations
after like what
how I handle certain situations. And I think that's kind of what brought the part in marriage where you like are really that's where you really learn the real part of marriage, like of like, okay, my spouse, this is how we go through things, or this is how we communicate. And it's like learning how we need to like approach certain things, or approach the way we talk to each other, or approach if we're going through something, like, do we talk about it, or do we have times in our week where we do talk about things that we're going through. Like for me, obviously at the time, I usually when I was dealing with something, I would always
if I did ask how are things, you'd be like, oh, it's okay, it's good.
Because my mindset at the time, right, and this is just how I was raised, was like, well, I wouldn't want to, like, we already both are going through things, or both are dealing with things. I wouldn't want to put that burden on you to have to worry about what I'm dealing with. So, which is not healthy. Like, don't do that. But I think that's what resulted in a lot of the things that we did going through following the 2020 year.
Because that was a rough year.
And obviously having our daughter there, that just added even more, because it's like, now we're not only there we're not only there to have to be there for each other, but we have to also be here for this little baby.
I'm trying to like figure, I guess my question for you is like, so that second year of marriage was really like rough. Like I was like, I don't even want to be married. Like, to be real, like I didn't want to be married anymore. Right. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, should we just get divorced?
I think because we were
it's a little dramatic for me to say that, but I was at the point where I was just like, because I just had a kid, like my daughter. I never, and like I was trying to build my business, and I was just like, so many things are going on that I'm like, I don't, if that's like, I just didn't want to deal with it. It sounds bad, but I was just like, oh, if it's just, like people talk about it. I think that's why there's so many married couples nowadays, like they're not married, because they're like, it's just easier to get a divorce. Like, let's not figure this out. It's just easier to just get divorced. So I was in that, that mindset of like,
and a part of that is they're not willing to work at what it is that they are both going
what's
through.
going through. Yeah.
Right? Because in the sense of we're both not perfect. We both go through our own things, but it's like, are we willing to go like be around or work through it with that other person? And I think that's something that we've learned in our marriage, is that when it comes to the way we handled certain things or the way we approach certain things was the result of basically how we were raised, right? How our lifestyle was, because we lived two different lifestyles growing up.
Yeah.
And I think we learned really quick in our marriage, in the years of being married, how different we were, or the different we grew up. So I think when it comes to people like giving up so easily, is because they're not willing to work through that. Right, because
they're just like, that's how you are, this is how I am.
Because most people, I feel like some people think that, once you're married, things are going to be perfect.
Yeah,
or things are just going to be so
different.
good.
Like you yourself is going to be different.
Right, and it's going to just be so like nice and easy. But people don't realize that marriage is work. Like, you work at your job, but then like most people work their jobs, and then they forget that when they come home, like marriage is work as well. Yeah, right. That's something that we've learned really quick. Is like, not only we have to put the time and effort. I was probably
at that point where I'm just like, I already have to. I was at home with our daughter, and then I had just graduated, I think, beauty school, and I was wanting to build my business. That I was just like drained to be like not work at our marriage, but to like think about, because especially if I did, like he was like, I'm good, so I'm just like, okay, like, but we're not good.
But I feel like looking back at that time, we also didn't put time. Through all of that, we didn't put time into each other. Yeah. Because COVID, everything was locked down. Well, right? So it's not like we were going out like date nights, right? Because things were locked down, and it's like, I was still working, thank God. But at the time, it's like, okay, I'm working.
He gets home, he's like,
tired. Then we got a crying baby at home. Spend time with my
daughter. I do give you credit, because out of like people, I do see like, he's really good with our daughter, like since she was born. That's why I feel like sometimes I feel like a little guilty, like, oh, am I a bad mom, because I never felt like I was one of those moms who like have to dedicate their whole life to their kids, which I don't think is healthy either. I feel like people have to have a life outside of their kids, right? But like, I think that's what added on too, was I just kind of felt left out, because they were like very close, like he was so good at taking care of her that I'm like, like I was like, well, what about me? Like,
right. Well, I think that's why there's a balance, and I think that's something that I've learned, because it's like, like, first and foremost, right, as I'm in a marriage, right, it's husband and wife, then your kids. Right. And I think for me, it was like my first kid, right, and I'm working, obviously, like at the time you're home with her, right? So it's like I'm working, I don't get to see her for pretty much half the day. So when I get home, I want to spend time with her. But then by that certain time, after I'm spending time with her, I'm tired.
Yeah, and he'll be like, I'm going to go play a game or something.
Well, like I'm tired, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, then it's not too long after that where I have to get ready to go to bed, so I can wake up and do that all over again. Right. But I did see that that's where I lacked, or that's where a part in our marriage where I lacked, because it's like that was a part that I kind of just didn't like.
I don't think you really think about it too, though.
Right, because it's like,
because it's not like I was telling you like, you're not spending time with me.
Right, but not until now, after what I've learned, obviously things.
I just felt left out between
things.
Those two.
Obviously I've learned a lot when it comes to the church that we go to now too. Right. I think there's so much things that I've learned through Pastor Jabin, and when he talks about husbands and marriage. Yeah. That's what I really learned is like, marriage is work on both ends, but it also like that's something that I can't forget to work at once I get home from work, right? So it's like you work, you come home, but then it's also I have to make sure I work at marriage, and not in the sense of like, what can I do for you today, but it's just like spend time with each other,
putting time into it. Yeah,
like Pastor Javen says, like we need to keep our like what does he say again? He's like, like date your spouse. Yeah. Right. To keep that.
Which is very important.
Like keep, what do you call that? Not keep the emotions, but like.
The flame.
Yeah. Keep the flame burning, I guess. Yeah. Like, dating each other. just being like how it was when we first met, or when we first started dating.
Obviously, we're not the same people, but you should never stop prioritizing your spouse in a sense
Right.
of like making time for them.
Right.
That's
And in
where,
that order, I think is the important thing, the order,
yeah,
right? Because it's like, yes, it's me and then you and then our kids.
yeah,
Like, not saying that our kids aren't that
or
important in our life,
less,
but
yeah,
in the sense of the things that as a husband that I need to take care of first, like I need to take care of my wife
yeah,
and then my kids, and not
right,
keep or put my kids above my wife.
yeah.
Like
Same for
that's,
like wives too, though,
or
or
vice versa.
moms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll do like a whole episode on that because I have some opinions about it. But I think that's why I would feel guilty is because I'm like, why don't I feel like what moms usually feel like with their kids? Like, I love my daughter; she's everything to me, but yet like she's not. Like yeah,
Yeah. That's why when she's like, you know,
especially when she's going crazy.
or when she says like, oh, I'm your best friend, daddy, or like mommy's not your best friend. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, mommy was my best friend first. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, she's
But
such a
yeah, I think
blessing.
that's that was the point in time in our marriage where things, I guess, the rough patches, right? Where God, you're being taken through the valley, and you're like wondering, okay,
And it's funny because it
where
was
God
only the
is.
second year of marriage.
Right, but I think everything just
But it
hit,
was
like
really
it was
good.
kind of like a perfect storm in a sense
Well,
of
yeah,
like
because so many things were
COVID,
going
things got
on.
shut down, churches were shut down, churches were online.
Right.
We were very
More
like
so isolation.
isolated,
They really
like,
isolated people.
obviously outside of going out to work, I would we come home and we're just home with each other
Yeah.
every day.
Looking back on it now, like even talking and being like, oh, I felt left out. It was like a moment of like isolation in general because we didn't go out.
We weren't hanging out with friends because they
Yeah,
were like people
true.
that we did have were just, or our friends were basically people at church.
Yeah.
But like everybody was just being
Precautious.
isolated, right? To be cautious, and nobody like understood what was going on to
Yeah.
the extent of, how effective is this COVID stuff?
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, we won't even go into that
Maybe
right
in another.
now. But I think that's the point in our lives where we really realized how isolation can separate
yeah.
you from God.
Now,
right?
knowing what we know now, in a sense of like, well, how many years has it been since COVID?
4 years now. 2020.
That's so crazy because
2020 was like the first full year.
I
of
just
COVID.
feel like, whoa, it was that while, a while ago. It feels like it just happened. But like,
And it's 2024.
yeah,
So
knowing what we know now, we can, yeah,
yeah, I think there was a lot
it
of
just
stuff
makes
that
sense,
happened,
I guess,
right?
why that would have been like a rough year because
Right.
there was a lot of stuff going on.
No, and trust me, God knew that. What was like, He knew that He needed to pull us out of that
Yeah.
because just everything after that, right? Everything that He brought into our lives, the church,
And that was exposed.
that was exposed in our lives, which
Yeah.
we can go into that in another
Yeah.
topic. But
we have a lot of topics now that we can.
but I think a lot of that stuff that we realized in that year of marriage that
Yeah.
was
It was like a blessing, right? Like,
Right.
even though it's like crazy time, yeah, it was a blessing
yeah,
that
I think there was just
that whole thing happened.
right, there was just an aspect of like, after things started to be a little bit more open as far as like COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like places were slowly opening back up. Some churches were starting to have services in person. And that was when you came to me about one day while I was working. You told me that, hey, we should look into
Yeah. So like we had our
or
daughter.
pray about another church.
Yeah. We had our daughter during COVID time, and churches were closed, and that's like a huge part of us having a family. Like when we were dating, we talked about like, our kids
Raising
getting
our kids, yeah,
raising
in
our
their
kids.
church.
Yeah. And not like crazy church people, but yeah, like it's important. It's important that our marriage is centered on Christ, and like for our kids, that's what we want too. And yes, it is our role as parents to lead them in the right direction or guide them, but it is community too.
Right.
So for me, and it's funny because I didn't realize in a sense of community is what we were looking for, and now where we're at. But like, yeah, I just wanted our kids to be able to grow up in a community
Yeah.
of people with the same beliefs, or at least not the same beliefs. That sounds a little extra, but like, Yeah.
But who have, I mean, in the sense of where you're in a place, right, where there's a lot of other people there with kids who
Yeah.
have really great values,
There you
principles,
go.
and morals, in the
Yeah.
sense of your kid gets to be around
What we
that
align
environment.
with there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's very true, right? Like that saying where like, show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Yeah.
Whoever you associate, you're like,
Yeah.
they say like, oh, for if you hang around with, for example, for business, right? If you hang around with 4 millionaires, you will be the fifth,
Yeah.
right? Or if you hang around with four
Negative people.
lazy people,
Yeah.
you're going to be the sixth lazy person.
Yeah.
So for us, it was very important that we
I think your counting was
put-
off though. Anyways.
oh, I don't know what it is.
But yeah.
But it was important for us to place our daughter in an environment
Yeah. And I
that
just,
would be good for her.
right. And I wanted to be at church. It's so different watching something and then being there. Like,
Yeah.
and with anything, right? Like a sports game.
Right.
Same with church. Like it
yeah,
just,
the feeling is different, the intentions
churches were,
is different.
yeah.
Because
Churches, sorry, go ahead.
No, because it's the environment.
Yeah.
The environment really changes the way you engage and react
Yeah.
to certain things, because
It hits different.
sitting at or being at church and worship, you feel the environment. You
versus
feel
seeing
the
it
people,
on a screen.
Or, yeah, versus on the screen where you're just kind of
Yeah.
sitting there listening to people sing.
And a lot of churches were scared to open up at that time.
Right, because of the uncertainty.
Yeah,
of
and
what
like
was going on.
I think what is that like?
The fear.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I feel like the government
was
was
a
like,
year
you guys
of-
can't open churches either, right?
And it was a year of just
Yeah.
like a lot of fear being projected onto people that people just fed into, and
Yeah.
was afraid to go out and afraid to be around other people.
Yeah, of course. But I just
but-
wanted to go to like a church. And then one important thing was I wanted my daughter to be able to go to church and like actually learn stuff, not just like, we've helped out with kids' church, like little, babies. And it's just like, we didn't really have a curriculum.
babysitting.
Yeah, it's just like you're babysitting. And I feel like, I was like, there must be churches out there that have more than just that.
Right.
And like, so one church that came to mind was the church that we call home now, because we had visited here and there because of my family going to check it out. So that was the church that came to mind, because I'm like, well, we've both been to like different churches around the valley. This
Yeah.
is one church where we're like, okay, we get some kind of feel for it. So I asked him, for us to pray about it. And then he's like, okay, well, yeah, I'll pray about it.
I think she was at the time like a little like, man, like,
Yeah.
just,
I
she
was
was probably
like-
telling God, like, God, tell this guy to.
Yeah, because he's
This
my
is where I want
yeah.
to go.
Yeah, like he's my husband. I'm gonna follow his lead. So I was like, okay, Lord, like tell my husband like what church to go to, because yeah.
But I think, my job at the time, I did a lot of driving. So I would just drive. And most of the time I'm like in the car. If I'm not listening to podcasts or like listening to worship music, then I'm just like kind of praying. Or just not, I guess, I don't know why I said kind of praying, because it's more so I'm just like having a conversation with God
Yeah.
while I'm driving.
Which is what prayer
And
is.
yeah, basically. So like I'm praying about it, and I just felt like, okay, God, if this is the direction you want me to go in, like, I know I will know, like I will have that peace, because prior to that, right, the church that we were going to, my whole family goes there, and we basically were at this church when they first started.
It was a church
Here in
plant.
Vegas, there was a church plant, and a lot of the people we knew, we had great relationships with them. We considered them like our second family,
Yeah.
and it was kind of
Yeah, I want to mention that. Nothing was wrong with the church in the sense of like
Right.
we didn't like the people or anything, but
Right.
we just felt like God was
Yeah.
just
like
tugging us in a different direction.
during my prayer, like God just showed me that it was a place I was comfortable. Right, it was a place I was comfortable. It was a place that obviously my entire family was going, but he kind of showed me an image in my mind of like basically a bird leaving the nest. Right.
Did this
And-
happen while you were driving? He's told me this story, but I didn't know where it exactly
Yeah, it was while I was
came.
driving, and I was just conversating with God, and like I just was having this image of a bird leaving the nest. And sometimes people have that saying of you're leaving the nest when you get married,
Yeah.
right? But I looked at it as I'm leaving the nest of where my home church was, or
It's
where my
comfortable.
family, where my comfort was.
Yeah.
And God just showed me a picture of that like a bird leaving their nest. And I just felt like at the time I was like, okay, like that was just all I needed. Like that was the piece I needed, that I looked at it as, yeah, in marriage, I'm, leaving my parents, right, and becoming one with my wife. But I think in that part of my life was, yeah, like I'm leaving the comfort of what I felt like I grew up in, right? Because a lot of people grow your faith with the church that you go
Yeah.
to for so long. So it's like you kind of feel like you've grown up there,
Yeah.
right, in your faith.
I'm like, oh,
And
so
it's
one
like,
day our kids are going to have to do that too.
right. And then it's like, okay, well
Hopefully
then,
not, but
and God kind of, and it was like having that hard feeling of like, dang, I'm leaving where I grew up in my faith
right.
to start something new. But God showed me that, yeah, like I'm leaving that to start something new with my family, because now I have my own daughter.
Which is another topic that
And
we can talk about, boundaries
right.
with.
So like now I have my own daughter, and
Right.
now my focus is building that faith with my wife and my daughter.
Yeah.
Right. Or
That's good.
finding our home, our church home. And ever since then, that's it's been pretty
Yeah.
great.
The Lord is good, like obedience, because it wasn't easy for us. We knew everybody in the
Yeah.
previous church we were at. We were
Yeah.
good friends.
We were really close with, I mean,
They
I
were
was close,
family.
yeah, they were,
Or our family.
and it was just something that, again, I think in a place of being comfortable, right? Like you just feel comfort, you feel safe, right? And it's like going to another church where you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
Nobody
you're the
knows
new
who you
person.
are.
Yeah, you're the new person. Nobody
And-
who knows you are. It's very,
And I think you can agree, like to
intimidating.
us, City Light, even though they thought it was more intimate, to us that was big.
Oh yeah.
Like I was like,
yeah.
they had like 4 or 5 services.
Right.
Yeah,
And it would be pretty packed.
yeah, like one service would already be packed, and mind you, it was like hundreds of people.
Right.
So to us,
So-
that was like big. So yeah,
Yeah, it was a lot. But I think during that season, we just started to realize the things that God showed us that we had to work on.
yeah,
And I think the biggest part of that move was just the intentions, or what our intentions were.
Yeah.
Right? Our intentions, I mean, yeah,
it
number
wasn't
one,
just like we're gonna move churches. We
Right.
actually had, I guess that's where like we started to actually set a vision,
right, like our
without even
intention-
knowing it
Yeah, 'cause
until
our
like
intention
now.
was, like our intention was for us to bring our daughter into a place where she can grow up and learn about God, and learn about a relationship with God, and be around other kids who are in that same environment.
Yeah,
And then also for us, to learn more about, how to be married, how to be husband and wife, and
right.
that
Parents.
aspect. And then also parents, how to be parents, because we were new parents and we're still figuring this thing out. And there was a lot of stuff that happened in our first year of
Yeah.
parenting that I think, for me personally, I was just like, I need some guidance in this
Yeah.
thing, because it was
And I think what else?
crazy year.
I was gonna say something else with that when it came to church. Oh, like, and actually getting into community and being intentional
yeah.
with our relationships. I know that was a huge thing. So, yeah, knowing now, like how God worked just because of our obedience for just that one thing. It wasn't really little, like it was a big decision, but like just being obedient, like they say, right? Like, delayed obedience is disobedience. So I feel like I always look back and I'm like, dang, just us being obedient in moving, it really, like, our life isn't perfect, but he
Yeah.
placed everything together. I feel like even our mindset has changed, our outlook on life. Like we weren't Debbie Downers, but like
Right.
our mind, like it just expanded. Like, yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
No, yeah,
I'm sure you
like,
can explain it better than I
I think
can.
it's just because of
The environment.
the
we're in.
environment.
Yeah.
The environment of the people that you're around. Obviously, Pastor
Which is a
Jabin.
huge thing.
The things that is talked about across the pulpit, right? I mean, one thing I love about Pastor Jabin is, he's a real, he's a real deal when it comes
Yeah,
to
he doesn't sugarcoat anything.
yeah, preaching the word straight out of the Bible.
Yeah.
And the things, the principles that he teaches out of the Bible, everything. I could say for me, one of the things that I guess my biggest takeaway of going into that church was just the truth that would come across the pulpit, that I would get. I mean, I've learned, I can say, even though we were probably a year into parenting before we found City Light, but I learned so much within the first like few months of
In
going
terms
to
of being a father.
being of how to be a father, how to be a husband in that time of attending City Light than I've ever learned in my entire life. So
Right.
that was obviously God.
Yeah.
God brought me there because he knew what I was looking for and I needed that.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like we said, we didn't plan our daughter, but I remember Bronson and I had a conversation in the car, and our pastor, it was after the Tuesday pod recording they had, and like our pastor will use his daughter, to explain certain things, and like Bronson ended up like having a moment of sharing something our daughter, the Lord taught him something through our daughter, and I was like, even though we weren't ready, like for our daughter, her being born was what really helped align everything for us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because we wouldn't
Definitely.
have been honestly, there were times where I wanted to look for a new church, like ever since we were dating. But yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, like if it wasn't for our daughter being born, I don't think I would have pushed to be like, hey, we need to find a church that we can get in alignment with.
Right.
Yeah, so it's God's
Yeah,
good.
she definitely came at the right time.
Oh yeah. Even
I
though they
think-
say there's no perfect time,
No, yeah.
obviously.
You can never I feel like
She came in the Lord's timing.
to an aspect you can plan for a kid,
Right.
but still like you could never plan for what comes after.
Right, because we can't control
'Cause-
things.
yeah, 'cause
obviously you
anything-
learned that in
yeah.
our first year.
I mean anything that
more
happens,
so, but
right? Anything that happens after is like is unknown.
yeah,
But I think that's the beauty in it is because like you don't know what it is that you're going to learn or you're going to have to learn, or maybe that God is going to show you that, hey, you need to like step up in this, right? Or
Right.
there's just a lot. I think there's a lot of stuff that you learn as about yourself or things that you need to work on past just having your kid.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that was kind of something that I think it's a good thing to start off with, just kind of letting you guys know about a little bit about
Who
us.
we are.
Obviously,
go ahead.
obviously, like this is something that this is just the start of what we plan on doing with this podcast.
Yeah.
I think this whole started for me, right? This whole thing started for me on the purpose of sharing about what it is that I've learned so far about being a husband, being a father, the values and principles, stuff like that, things that I've learned from my pastor that he spoke about. This is going to be a podcast where we're just going to share these things,
Like
and
real situations or like
Right.
real conversations. Some things might be like controversial, I think.
yeah,
But
I think a lot of it stems from
we're just
our
gonna be real.
like our interpretation of what we felt God has taught us,
Yeah.
right, through his word. Now his word can tell somebody something very different,
Right.
But what we've interpreted and what we learned in our own marriage,
Yeah.
And how we've applied things that we've read in the Bible to our marriage and to
Yeah.
our to raising our kids. I think there's very good concepts or things that we've learned that God has shown us. This is not something that we feel like, okay, this is how you need to do things, or this
Oh,
is
yeah,
how you
this
need
is
to raise your kids. Because
our opinions.
this literally
But-
is our interpretation of what God has shown us, you know,
Yeah.
and what He's taught us through His
Yeah.
word. So
And I think like especially, I mean, I'm not going to get too much into it, but like even with Christian families, I feel like even that can be brought into light of it has to be a certain way, but people's interpretations of things, yeah, we all have our interpretation of things, but I just feel like God really has been speaking to us in a sense of, like people feel like it has to be a certain way, but
Right.
it could be totally not. Like, yeah, well, I don't know
Yeah.
how to explain it, but you guys will kind of get a feel
Yeah.
for it as we go on throughout the
it's
episodes.
just very like there's a very outside perspective of things.
Yeah.
Right. But then
for those
there's-
who are Christian and not Christian.
right, and then there's also a very like, well, what does the word really say?
Yeah.
Right. And again, yeah,
Would you say
the
this
word
is
can the word can say mean anything to somebody, right? Because you interpret it however you feel God is speaking to you.
Mhm.
So again, this is just the way we felt the word is shown
Yeah.
us.
Would you say
Um,
this is necessarily going to be like a Christian genre or not really?
I mean, it could. Um,
I feel like
it's
anybody of
based
any
right.
aspect can.
It's based on our faith. It's based
Yeah,
on
our faith
the
is a huge
foundation,
thing
right? The
for us, so
foundation,
we can't
right?
avoid it. But I feel like even if you're not
Right.
Christian, you'll still be able to.
But the foundations of like our principles, the values,
I think no matter what
a lot of the
religion
aspects.
someone is or background, you'll still
Yeah.
get an intake of like,
I feel
yeah,
like for me, I feel like there's no greater teacher when it comes to marriage,
oh
parenting,
yeah,
being a husband
the Lord
than the
is.
Lord, than the word. So
Yeah, because ladies, if you can't tell your husband something, the Lord will.
yeah,
Yeah.
facts. But I think that's just
And vice versa, I think.
yeah, and that's just I think that's just what stems from a lot of the things that have been placed on our hearts to talk about. So yeah,
I guess, what are we going to end it now?
yeah.
Well, I just wanted to ask, since you've been asking a lot, what is your, not expectation from this, or like, what would you,
Like out of this,
yeah,
um,
or what was on your, either like what's
I
your
guess my
expectation or what's on
expectation
your
of this.
heart?
I guess my expectation.
We were supposed to done, but we're almost done.
I guess my expectation of this podcast would to be just to give people hope that being like marriage, being a spouse, being a parent isn't as complex or isn't as intimidating. Because I think to a certain extent, right, especially when it comes to marriage, like there's a lot of things that may not be talked about because of, I don't know, maybe stigmas or some people wanting to show, have a certain
Like taboo.
no, they just having to want to have a certain image of their marriage, right? That they act a certain way just because they don't want people to look at you in a certain
Yeah.
light. But I think really, like, there's no greater marriage or examples of marriage than just being
You.
who you are
Yeah.
or being who we are, especially when it comes to parenting. And I think because we are the example, right? We are our kids' examples. We are leading them. It is our duty to lead them the best way we can. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions of how a husband should be in a marriage, how a husband should provide, how a husband should lead their family, lead their kids.
Yeah.
That I feel God has placed on my heart to talk about because it's not talked about enough. And I think that's what it is. It's just a view, or I don't know what that word is. It's maybe just like a misconception of what we need to do as husbands, and especially during a time like this, right? During a time where we're in a world where like the family unit is being attacked.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of division. The divorce rate is higher than it's ever been. Right. Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that is going on that I feel my outcome from this is to give people just like that hope of that that's not how marriage is.
Yeah.
That's not how parenting is. I mean,
Right.
there's just so much, again, there's just so much division when it comes to family and kids that I think there was something that was missing. And I think the thing that was missing was like true biblical teachings of what marriage should be, what a family should look like, how a husband should lead their family. Because again, me just saying that statement, people probably in their mind go straight to, well, you need to be a provider financially, but it's more than just that.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to get into that.
And that'll be topics that we'll talk about on this podcast. So, stick around, and if you enjoy it, we welcome you.
Yeah. Just to kind of like piggyback off of that, and I'll end with this, is like, for me, for a very long time, ever since like high school, God was even though like YouTube was a new thing, social media was like not really existent, I always felt like through YouTube or like a social media platform, I'd be able to reach like people. And it's funny because now with us doing this, it's like, okay, God, like this is the, I guess, what he was talking to me about. And like my husband and I were like talking, and I remember one morning I was getting ready for work, and God specifically was like, you need to share what you have been through, or like, because not very many women are not going through it, but are talking about it.
Yeah.
He's like, there are women out there who are dealing with what you're dealing with, who pretty much have a similar life that you do, and they don't know anybody else
Right.
who's going through it. And like Bronson said, like, if we can, I mean, who knows who's going to watch this, if even if it's one person, but something that we say reaches out, I think that's what our intentions are, basically, is whoever this can reach. And I like always knew this, like I would even like say this whenever I used to do YouTube, you know, trying to be YouTube famous. I would be like, if this reaches one person who needs to hear it, then that makes me happy. Yeah, so I'm excited.
That's good. So I mean,
we definitely have a lot of topics that we're going to talk about because this has helped, but yeah.
And then honestly, in all honesty, it's just what we've learned a lot, and we just feel that we have a lot to share that that could possibly help
someone.
Other. Yes, you know, that's just where this came to be. So
excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Me too.
I know we've been talking about this for a very long time, and I want to say thank you to Austin because
Shout out.
He, like him and the rest of the guys.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, they're just to give you some context, they're, you know, they're my boys, I guess.
we have to say all of them now.
Yeah. But yeah, they definitely played a role in.
This is where I say the Lord will talk to your husband, because if it wasn't for them, I don't think this day would have really happened on this day.
But no, definitely, I want to just give honor and shout out to the guys, my boys that we do Tuesday nights. I mean, if you'll probably see us shouting out the podcast, but yeah, I've been meeting with these guys every Tuesday, where we just really dig into the Word. And I would say, yeah, if it wasn't for them, obviously encouraging me, giving me that extra push. I mean, I had no excuse because literally they've been a blessing. They've blessed us with so much.
They blessed us with equipment. And then like we're in a transition of moving. So we're like, okay, well, we can't even like get the place set up. So Austin was like, hey, you guys are welcome to use.
Yeah, definitely. This is a blessing.
So we couldn't say no because, again, I mean, if God will give you the resources to do what he for you to be that vessel, and we're just being obedient.
And again, I believe that's another reason why it's important to be in community.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And to have people around you that pour into you, lift you up. You know, they pretty much cultivate your vision, right?
Yeah.
I feel like so much people have a vision, have a dream, have a goal, but they're just not around people that are cultivating that for them, you know, pouring into them and encouraging them to do that. So there'll be a little bit of that as well on here. But I think this is a great start to kind of just share with you guys about who we are, what we want to do. Hope you guys, you know, tag along on this journey that we are going to be on.
Even if you don't, we're still going to be here.
And this is episode 1, which we don't even have a name yet for this podcast, we will.
Just like everything, our kids did not have names till like they were born. They were born. The other one, it was like 2 months before she was born, or a month before she was born. So we'll see what we come up with. But
thank you guys for joining us and listening in for this hour.
And more.
Right. But I hope you guys enjoy or learn something about us, and look forward to more episodes to come. So all right, see you guys.